actually, I don't know, does this lead into the thing that you mentioned before that was your other change of mind?
Well, the other thing I just stumbled into on my own podcast talking to Paul Bloom, one of us asked the other what ethical lapses we as a generation are guilty of that our descendants would view with just horror, analogous to the way we view the slaveholders of the past. You look at someone like Thomas Jefferson, obviously a smart, ethical person, but he couldn't understand really that slavery was an abomination. So in what sense are we just as blind, morally speaking? And on our short list on both of our lists was the horrors of factory farming. I mean, it's obvious that if you look at the details there, that's just morally indefensible. And I would want no part of it. And yet I seem content because I eat meat to delegate this slaughter and all of its attendant miseries to other people. And so we just sort of started talking about that, and then I more or less found myself performing an intervention on both of us, kind of challenging us to defend our practice of eating meat, and finding that I couldn't, and Paul also conceded that he couldn't. I've decided to become a vegetarian, and perhaps a vegan. I'm now getting, as you might expect, inundated with information from vegans and vegetarians, which I actually solicited. And I had been a vegetarian earlier in life and found that I got anemic, and, I was not a especially smart vegetarian, but I just eating more or less whatever I felt like, and it didn't totally work out. I did that for about 6 years, but that was like 20 years ago. And so now I'm trying again, and it's interesting to me.
Can I just ask a clarificatory question? Because I agree 100% that we are going to look back at factory farms like we look back on anything, like as bad as anything that we've done as a species. What about that sort of? This is where I landed when I changed my mind. Is local free-range meats, free-range eggs, free-range cheese, all the free-range milk. Because there I don't see as much of an ethical problem. I was just in Romania with my brother, and we were in these small villages in northern Romania and northern Transylvania. And, there are these cows that are just wandering through the towns. They're in the pastures, and they go down to the creek and get water. And then you have their milk in the morning, or you have, or maybe you eat one of them after they've been slaughtered. But, they seem like they have a great life that they wouldn't otherwise have had if it weren't for the fact that there were meat eaters and milk drinkers and egg eaters and so forth. Well, what do you think about that as a compromise?
The one reason why that doesn't work for me, let's leave aside dairy and eggs, because I think there is certainly some ethical version of that's at least conceivable, though many vegans would dispute that. So you just conjure the happiest cow in the world and, put it close to me. It's at the restaurant down the street.
That cow.
And this cow, it had a better life than zero. It was good that it existed, and now it's going to be killed. So that separates out the misery imposed on the animals in factory farming from their death. I think the fact of their death is, as you suggested, the least problematic part. And if they have happy lives until the moment of death, well, then that's a net good. Everybody's got to die, but my issue ethically, and this may just be more personal to me than it may not be truly generalizable. I just feel that if you told me that happy cow was down the street and, lunch arrives and I have to decide what to eat, given that I have other sources of protein, I would not feel good killing that cow to get a hamburger. And I would never feel good killing that cow to get a hamburger, and therefore delegating the killing of that cow to somebody doesn't seem ethical.
I see, because you wouldn't want to kill it. And
there's no way.
Having somebody else do your dirty work.
Yeah.
In a way.
And this is separable from, there is dirty work that I don't want to do, that I see no ethical problem with. I mean, I don't want to, clean cesspools. There's things where the details are, would be hard for me to stomach, but I recognize that these are totally necessary jobs. But this is not one of them. This is, if in the presence of that cow, given the stun gun or whatever the most compassionate, instrument of death is, I would not want to do it. I would feel terrible that my preference for a hamburger over a veggie burger or whatever it is, was so strong and ineluctable that I would, go into the backyard and kill this animal or have someone else do it for me. Just imagine doing that in front of your kids. The whole thing intuitively, viscerally, just seems indefensible to me, and it's increasingly. It is species dependent. I think it's less defensible in the presence of in the case of a pig than in the case of a fish, certainly. And
it's contingent, and it really is contingent upon our non-need for that source of protein. I was raised vegetarian. I never ate meat. I wear leather though, and so I
lot
worry.
of leather.
Just
chaps.
but I save on the ass part because I never have the leather cover that. So what I don't get, so I'm with you. I've given Tamler shit about this a little bit, but I want to give Paul a bit of shit about this because he just straight up suffers from weakness of will, right? Like he is, for someone who with me in print has championed the ability of reason, to overcome, these emotional weaknesses. He seems pretty convinced, but just doesn't act.
Yeah. I think that's pretty common. It's rare to find people that think, factory farms are fine.
I
think Paul is
convinced by more.
Embarrassed to thinking that it's an atrocity, and then it's just a question of that other step of, because there are ways you can rationalize to yourself, look, it's not like me not eating that hamburger is going to save the life of a cow, or even me not eating hamburgers, period, is going to save the life of a single cow or make the life of a cow better.
But I'm making a specific point about Paul. I believe that Paul doesn't rationalize, and I believe that Paul is convinced. I don't think, right, yeah.
Listen to my podcast with him. He's just as troubled by this as I am. He has a problem when he's one of the few scientists on Earth who knows what the word acrasia means. He's walking around talking about acrasia, so he knows he has a problem.
He's just like a craddock. He's just
what can help with that is a little empathy.
A little empathy, if only Paul. Presumably though, the empathic response is one of the things that's preventing you from wanting to kill a cow, and maybe even from wanting to pay someone to kill the cow.
Right.
I like the idea of being RICO prosecuted for eating a burger, Like, you can't, you're just the godfather of the slaughter.
Well, this is an interesting ethical conundrum for me because it's, as I've argued for a pretty tight connection between morality and human well-being, but that doesn't mean that it's always tight in real time and, that it's not possible to have sort of local, areas of even shocking immorality that are compatible with some kind of psychological well-being, and so I think we're all participating in a system that is ghastly, and yet the fruits of that ghastliness are not really felt by us. Our well-being is not diminished in any kind of reliable way by the fact that we are, in order to get our favorite hamburger, we stand, downstream of, horrors that we would never countenance if we just took, 5 minutes to pay attention to them. and we can live our entire lives like
that. They're systematically trying to conceal it from us. You know, there are all these ag-gag laws where people are trying to, especially state legislatures in like Iowa or something, where factory farming is big business. They try to pass laws that prevent people from just videotaping what goes on. I mean, I think if everyone just had to watch an hour video of what goes on in a pig farm, a chicken farm, a dairy farm, you know, some of the worst suffering that we impose on the animals, I think it wouldn't, some people would just shrug their shoulders but it would be a lot harder to take that acratic, you know, weakness of will route after that. You know, I think a lot of other people would be at the very least a lot more motivated to seek out non-factory farmed or to vote against, you know, or to vote for measures that try to ban crates but they, you know, they know that and they know that's a danger. And so they try to stop it. And that's the thing that, like, it makes me so angry to even think about the fact that they just want us to not know what's actually going on.
But Tamler, are you convinced in the way that Sam is that even the non-factory farming poses this ethical problem?
No, I'm not. I mean, I'll be honest. Yeah, I think that, you know, the arguments against that move me more are more that, you know, if everybody did that, it would become very expensive to have meat and therefore, you know, restricted maybe to a high
really rich
SES.
people.
Yeah, really rich people would be the only people who could afford meat.
Wait, isn't that what non-factory farming is doing? Like local and organic?
Yeah, it's much more expensive, but it would be even more expensive if that was the only meat you could get.
Right. So Tamler's more worried.
If we just banned factory farms, which I would do right now if I was Philosophy King, no more factory farms, that's done. Now the price of meat goes way, way, way up to a point where, you know, I doubt I could afford it anymore, or certainly not. Yeah.
Is this a pre-commitment device to not eat the meat because it's unethical? I don't get the sort of conclusion of the argument.
Tamler is more worried about checking his privilege than standing knee deep in gore for every meal he has to kill a happy cow for.
Well, look, that cow, I mean, you're right that I wouldn't want to do it, and that's a kind of squeamishness, but I have no ethical problem with being on a farm, raising a bunch of happy animals that never would have lived. And then, you know, a lot of these farmers, they don't love doing it, but it's just part of the life, and they do it.
But then why not do that with your pets? I mean, so it's like these animals.
Because we don't want to eat our pets.
No, but
I don't have a huge ethical problem with doing it with the
slicing
pets.
your dogs.
And believe me, I love my dogs in very problematic ways, like other ethically problematic ways. But like, yeah, I you know.
But wait a minute.
If you give an animal a good life.
Think of your dogs for a second.
Like, I don't have a problem if anybody's doing that with me. If somebody wants to kill me now in 10 years.
All right.
But you hate the thought of dogs, like dog fighting. I mean, this is just abhorrent to you.
Yeah.
Like in a way that like.
Absolutely.
That
I don't think they have good lives though.
Okay.
Yeah, but your argument isn't that like at the very end of their lives you put them in a dog fight.
So I have a friend who follow this line of thinking because this seems compatible with what you just said. I have a friend who he's actually not a philosopher, but he's very philosophical, and he once asked, you know, why would it be unethical if I'd like a dog, but I travel a lot and I don't want to have to deal with a house sitter or I just don't want to have to deal with you boarding it, the expense, but I love dogs, and so why can't I go to a shelter and get a dog? And take care of it, and then every time I need to leave for a trip, just return it to the shelter to presumably be killed if it doesn't get adopted.
Lease rather than own the dog.
Exactly. Right. And just keep doing that. Just do that all the time. Or you could just
have a little incinerator. You wouldn't even have to go, like, save you the trip to the.
So now what's wrong with that? I had an answer for this. Is there anything wrong with that, or is this totally kosher behavior?
Well, no. Putting a dog in an incinerator because you don't feel like boarding it? No.
Bring it back to the shelter. It's like you get the dog from the shelter, you take it home, you love it, you're there, you got it for a month, it's your dog. Everybody meet my dog, and then you got a trip to, Wyoming to ski or whatever. And so then you bring the dog, you dump the dog back at the shelter, and really don't worry about what happens to it. It had a better month anyway.
No-kill shelter?
No. It is a kill shelter. It's just maybe it'll be rescued by somebody else.
You saved it. You gave it happiness for
a little longer than it would have otherwise had. Yeah. I mean, look, it's a weird question because I don't think anybody would do that.
It's a great question.
It is a great question.
But no. It's fine. It's a good question. I'm just saying that, like, if I have a problem with that, it's more a kind of virtue ethics problem with it. Like, what kind of person would do that more than
I agree.
That's like, you know, from the like I can see from a utilitarian standpoint, hey, look, you gave the dog an extra month of, it's like Make-A-Wish Foundation for a dog. You know?
What a bum deal to live with Tamler is the last
want to read
wish.
The fine print on that wish. No, I agree.
I have made a lot of dogs who wouldn't otherwise be happy.
I agree, but it says something about you as a person that you're capable of delimiting your experience of empathy and bonding with this pet in such a way that will allow you to just keep dumping it effectively into an incinerator and getting a new one every time you take a trip. It is sort of psychopathic behavior from the point of view of anyone who's had the experience of loving a pet.
Right.
As you have.
Right.
Now, I'm saying that if we make these cows or farm animals sufficiently happy, they have sufficiently good lives, that begins, I think, in the limit to look like keeping them as pet. Now, I'm not saying that there would necessarily be no difference, but it begins to look like, we are really looking out for their interests. We're concerned with their well-being. We're living in proximity with them. And then you have to look more closely at the decision to go over there with a stun gun and suddenly turn your, backyard into an abattoir because you felt like inviting people over for steak. And
maybe your notion of what a virtuous person would be now would change as well. Right.
I mean, it does depend, I think, on the relationship you have with the animal. I mean, if your cows are happy cows that have all the room, but they pretty much kind of live their own lives, dogs are the thing.
There's no curfew.
Dogs, we have a very special relationship with dogs. They're an intimate part of your lives if you have them, and so it's a different relationship than you would have with a pig or a goat. I don't know about a pig. A pig might be more similar, actually.
Well, pigs arguably are even smarter than dogs, as is rumored. But what you're just describing is a bandwidth problem. That's just a time problem. If I had more time, I'd have a relationship to everything and everyone. So it's just the issues. You don't have time to hang out with your cows because you've already got dogs and then you've got a job. But that is just a contingency that I think doesn't have much ethical weight.
Perspective, it does depend on your relationship with that thing.
Right, but then there are certain people who would be perfectly okay sort of, having dogs and killing them and
but I'm also saying that if you were super virtuous, you could extract all the meaning of all the ethical content of a relationship in a very brief meeting with the animal. In fact, during this brief span of time it would take to decide whether or not you wanted to kill it and cook it.
Right.
So you go out into the yard.
That's probably true.
So are you convinced? No. So did Sam convince
my daughter had this just from seeing cows separated from calves in Costa Rica. When you were there, Dave, that trip, that she saw these cows being separated from their calves on the road. And these are probably cows that have good lives relative to, American cows. Yeah. And she was a big meat eater at that point, loved rare steaks and stuff. She just stopped and hasn't eaten it since. Yeah, so I think that's a good way of entry, and I think it is sort of like, it has to do with the kind of personal connection. I definitely I see what you're saying, and a big part of me.
I think really it'll be a question of just sort of behavioral economics and nudges to get people to make vegetarianism much easier, and that to me is the big problem. It's getting people to move, as Tamler was saying. Many people who reflect on this probably,
right. Well, also synthetic meat.
One nudge is having a daughter that doesn't eat meat. Because then that like limits my choices. That's a great nudge, actually.
Yeah. Well, that's why my mom was raised, in a fairly rural environment and just was grossed out and and just stopped. And so I was raised with no meat, so it poses no temptation.
What about fish?
Do you
Sam?
eat fish? Do you eat fish, David?
I don't. My mom was sort of disgusted by all animal products, and so we didn't even really we didn't have eggs. She used milk because of a scientific belief that was a source of calcium for us when we were growing up, but no. I wish I ate fish because I do actually believe that they might not have the sort of nervous system that I would consider suffering and that they are healthy for you.
Yeah, well actually,
but I just can't stomach them.
That's another conversation. I would like to do a kind of proper taxonomy of the plausible emergence of qualia and consciousness and suffering,
Right, like octopus.
Yeah.
I mean, so like octopus, we know they're pretty damn intelligent. They
That's
probably
like killing
are.
that's like killing a small child.
Yeah.
They're really, really smart.
So that would be interesting to I don't know if Peter Singer has done this or anyone has focused on this, but just to look in a kind of comparative neuroanatomical way across all the species and intelligently assess, what is the worst sort of animal to farm and mistreat, and just kind of go because people I hear now from people who call themselves bivalve vegans. They eat clams and scallops and oysters because they think there's no possibility of consciousness there, which you certainly could make that argument.
Right.
I've heard that about oysters, and thank God for clams.
But as I was
like me, you love steamed clams.
As I was listening to Tamler, to your offering sort of the reasons why it's okay if they're happy cows, and this isn't to give you shit, is actually just, I was imagining the very advanced computers who could just take your transcript and repeat it back to you when they were telling you why they were about to kill you.
I'd be like, that's fine, but that's what I'm saying. I think that's totally fine. Like, hey, you gave me this life, I'm happy. You want to end it a little earlier? I have a bald spot, fuck it. At least I had a good run. There's
the alopecia argument for the utility monster.
He's ready to give up.
Yes. My life
you're
is
gonna
not
find
worth
a tribe where when you start balding, they just take you up to the mountains. Like you start.
Clearly, my life is no longer worth living.
All right. Well, Sam,
did we cover
very
it?
much, Sam.
Yeah.
I think we covered it.
We'll enjoy veggie burgers on at the dawn of the singularity together.
When we, and we can.
Can you have a steak at least on that day when they've decided the hell with it?
When we ourselves are being turned into soylent for the machines.
When they feed us, like that Twilight Zone episode, like How to Cook Humans.
Right. To serve man.
Just feeding us beef. Thank
you
Sam.
So much,
thanks,
Sam.
guys. A pleasure as always.